I can't be the only one who is reminded of the Bronx from Coco's Neighborhood, am I? I won't lie, this episode actually does have a bit of a personal connection with me, mainly because it does remind me a lot about my life here in New York and stuff like that. So basically the idea of the episode is that Rarity and Applejack are called to Manhattan by the map, but to a smaller portion of Manhattan, not the gigantic city that you would think it is. Basically what's going on is that Coco is trying to revive a community event where basically they try to bring the community together with this kind of like play and performance and stuff like that. It's a really cool thing because it does remind me of things that happen here in New York where we have like community carnivals, community plays, and other stuff like that. Like those are very common here in New York. As a matter of fact, if you were to go to the city or hell, even the smaller portions, you could see them quite often. And it does remind me of that very vividly when I see this, like Coco trying to bring the neighborhood together, so she does like this community event, and there's plenty of those, like I said, here in New York, more specifically the Bronx. This is why I say this episode kind of feels like we're in the Bronx version of Manhattan, rather than just being in the major city of Manhattan. What ends up happening, however, is that no one has the time to basically do it, and when Applejack and Rarity begin working on, like getting the thing set up, they even realize they don't have enough time to basically set up the entire event. So what they end up going to is, well, as Applejack said, let's not worry about what we can't do and worry what we can do. So they do a small little street play, which ends up garnering a lot of attention to the point that it brings the community back together, and we do get the moral of the episode. Even if you don't have a lot of time, any amount of time is good, but basically the idea is this. Even if you can only make a small contribution, it could be effective in a big way. As said in the episode, because they decided to do a street performance instead of this large event, they still ended up making a big impact in a neighborhood and bringing it back together. So it does show, and it does show them, it's like, hey, if you have any time whatsoever, it's always a good thing if you can to give it, because hey, every contribution, even small, can always help make a big impact at the end of the day. So all in all, what do I think about this episode? Well, as a first impressions, I do quite enjoy it. It has a really cool moral behind it, and I do have a personal connection with it because of, the amount of New York references and stuff like that, especially since I'm a New Yorker, and I can attest to a lot of this stuff actually happening in New York. So, me personally, I quite enjoy this episode, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of New York bronies that might like this episode as well. But as for other bronies, I wouldn't be able to say, but I'm pretty sure there are others that do like this episode as well. And that's my speed impressions on Made in Manhattan.